How on earth can you merge the emotional brilliance of a raw brand like GTS into an electric car like the Taycan? That's one hell of a difficult task, but one that Porsche have claimed to achieve in this, the new Taycan GTS, shown here in the brand new Sport Turismo body form. Not to be confused with the CROSS Turismo, which is an easier riding, more off-road focused version of the Porsche wagon. The Sport Turismo drives identically to the saloon or sedan, which is the sportiest version of the Taycan. All you get is more junk in that beautiful trunk on the rear. Everything else stands as the sportiest version. And speaking of sportiest version, this is also the sexiest version in the brand new Taycan GTS Sport Turismo. Porsche say that it's the new perfect Goldilocks member of the Taycan family. And it's easy to understand why, given the long history of combustion GTS cars. But can they achieve that same magic with an electric car? And should they even have bothered trying? That's what we're going to find out today as we take a full and thorough look at this, the brand new Taycan Sport Turismo GTS. So guys, today's episode of RBR is sponsored by my favorite wallet company, The Ridge. Why are they my favorites? Because like you guys, I love carbon fiber, and they make simply the best carbon fiber wallets that I've ever seen. Look at that, matches exactly your car. You can get the forged one as well. Now with slim wallets, I'm usually used to this type of one. Yes, I'm a bit of a tart with the brand, but these can only hold 5, 6 cards maybe, whereas in the Ridge, you can get up to 12 cards plus cash within the cash strap here. I also love that when I put it in my pocket, it doesn't bulge at all, it's super slim. And it's got RFID blocking technology, so no one can take money out of any of my cards. Now, of course, I've got a discount for you guys. All you need to do is go to theridge.com/RBR, use the code RBR. You'll get 10% off one of these awesome carbon wallets. Help support the channel as well, and you'll have something super stylish and something that matches lovely motorsport cars. So go to ridge.com/RBR. So guys, the Taycan family has grown. Much like Asian families, when you get a little bit too excited and you pop out one too many, this is that kid in your family who is intellectually brilliant, the athlete of the family. That's what the GTS has always been. But how on earth do you achieve that with an EV without the whole thing seeming contrived? Normally a GTS adds that much more driving emotion, driving sound, different things in terms of the look inside and out. Let's see if this achieves that. And to understand that, first, we have to see where the car slots in, which of course is in between a 4S and a turbo. So our 4S Taycan produces 490 bhp and 571 on overboost. 0 to 60 is 4 seconds dead, and it's got 650 Newton meters of torque. Above that sits the Taycan Turbo. This has got 625 brake horsepower, 680 on overboost, 0 to 60 of 3.2 seconds, and 850 Newton meters of torque. The GTS also has 850 Newton meters of torque. It's got 517 brake horsepower and a 0 to 60 of 3.7 seconds. So significantly faster than the 4S and edging closer to turbo, just like a traditional GTS does. Now the question is, under the skin, is it a proper GTS? Because it would suck if it was just a power update for a 4S to make it a bit more powerful. To answer that question, let's look at the truest GTS, which is of course the 911. What do they change in this? The main changes in the 911 are in things like the chassis, which is shared with the turbo, the helper springs that come from turbo and GT3, and then the brakes out of the turbo as well. And then on top of that, we're using the exact same engine hardware as, say, something like a Carrera S, but with a power bump. Of course, you get sports design packages standard and all the other blacking out, etc., etc., etc. But in terms of technical changes, the real focus is on the chassis. So when you come to Taycan GTS, in fact, there is more changed in terms of actual power hardware than even a 911. So I'll go over all the chassis changes, which are absolutely standard on GTS. It has to be the most sportive of the lot, and it is. So when it comes to the GTS, we're actually a lot more like a detuned turbo when it comes to the actual hardware being used in the electric motors. So all Taycans, as you guys know, come with permanently synchronous electric motors one in the front, one in the rear. Then you have different power inverters. So on our 4S and Turbo, you have a 300 amp inverter on the front and a 600 amp inverter on the rear. But where the difference between these two models come is the size of the electric motor on the rear. On our 4S, you get a smaller one at 130 millimeters, but on our Turbo, you get a larger one at 210. Now, that turbo, larger electric motor is also the motor that finds its way into the GTS, hence why we have the exact same torque figure as the Turbo, and hence why I'm saying it's more like a detuned Turbo. So it should feel different to a 4S driver like me, and it's nice to see that even versus 911, the actual hardware of the car quite different to a 4S. Now, of course, it's tradition with GTS to have it as the most aggressive setup in terms of the chassis and suspension. That's the same here with the GTS in the Taycan. So the adaptive suspension, particularly with the PASM, has been changed in order to benefit lateral dynamics, so that's all been done. If you take the optional rear wheel steering, that's been given a sportier setup as well. Again, all of that unique to the GTS, and of course the steering, etc., all been tweaked for this particular model. Of course, you get sports chrono package as standard with the drive select, the stopwatch, launch control, etc. But you also get a more aggressive sport mode than any other Taycan in the GTS, which is cool. And then to add further to emotion is a unique electric sports sound made just for GTS, which we will experience later in the drive. But what about the way that it looks? Because of course, historically with GTS, they have a more aggressive design, and this continues the same ideas. So we've got our sport design front apron here that you can see with the larger air curtains here. You've also got turbo design in terms of the lower lip and the side sills as well, again with the inserts, which you don't get on 4S, for example. Our rear diffuser is the same design from the Turbo in terms of the sports design rear apron as well. So everything is maximized Sport Taycan from the outset as standard on GTS. On our press car here, you can see you have the carbon fiber, which really highlights some of those elements really well, I think. Of course, you have blackened elements as well. So if you don't get the carbon, those areas will be in gloss black instead. And even the Porsche logo within the light bar is gloss black on the GTS. But the best part of the design are the optional RS style design wheels, which are frankly the best wheels that we've ever had on a Taycan. You compare them to all the others, these are the most Porsche-like. They look, well, they're just like the name, they're RS design wheels, and they look like something directly out of a mid-engine Porsche supercar and don't seem to have any detrimental effect on the range of this car either, which is fantastic. Finally, in terms of suspension, the GTS is actually the Taycan that sits the lowest out of the entire range as well, which gives it that lovely sports car-like stance. The range is also said to be slightly higher in this GTS because it's a newly homologulated version of the Taycan, which actually has front axle decoupling, so it doesn't use the front axle and hence saves a bit of range along with other changes. We'll have to take it on a longer test, or perhaps if I ever buy one of these, we'll see what it's like in real world use. Of course, you can get this as the saloon version as well. Be intrigued to know which one you guys prefer. I really like the Sport Turismo. You guys know that I have the CROSS Turismo as a daily car. I'm literally addicted to it. This could be the logical step up. So that's also something I want to discover today from a personal point of view. Is this Taycan GTS the EV to lust after as a daily car? And I can't wait to see that. Let's jump in now and see the upgraded interior that the GTS gets in the Taycan. So guys, as you last saw in my CROSS Turismo, that has the completely standard interior, which has like the man-made leather, normal plastic trims, etc. I quite like it. I did get the race tech steering wheel because I love it. But apart from that element, everything else is bog standard. Here in the GTS, you see the standard GTS trim. This is without the color option, so you can get like the red color for your stitching, for example, which I think would actually match this one quite nice. But this gives you an idea of what the standard GTS interior trim is like. So loads of race text as opposed to a little bit like in my car. All over the center console here, which is lovely. You get it on the door cards as well. You get a lovely, like an anodized black aluminium finish for the trim. Door handle's still the same as mine, which I think is absolutely fine. Nappa leather on the top parts. Loads of race text, as I said. You get the sports seats as standard in the GTS, and you can see the GTS within our headrest as well. These have been really nice, actually. I struggled to get comfortable with my seats originally, as I said in that video. These have been comfortable from day dot. They're just a bit more huggy, they're a bit more bucket seat-like. Something that I'm still not convinced about upgrading to is the second screen there. We just don't use it for anything. It's just there for the sake of it. So yeah, I would eschew that and stick with your normal screens. It's really not that necessary. As this is an early car, perhaps pre-production, you haven't got the GTS logo here on the steering wheel, which I saw in some pictures, and actually looked really, really nice. That would have been a nice differentiator, or having GTS written here where it says Taycan, because you normally have, you know, GTS within your driver zone, within the dials, but you don't have that feature in a Taycan, so it feels a little bit missing in this current interior. But forgetting all of that, the coolest thing that they've added in this generation of Taycan now is this new roof. All right, guys, here we go with the special panoramic roof. Get ready for this. So that's completely matte now, and I'll clear it. We'll go to semi, bold, or it can actually let me take complete control of it myself. Look at that. How awesome is that? My cameraman Jamie kept making these sounds while doing this. When he showed me originally, he was like, why is he making sucking sounds? Anyway, love that. It's really good. It does block out a lot of light, blocks out lots of harmful rays as well. So well worth getting. The only thing is it looks a bit different on the outside sometimes compared to the normal glass roof, but I think it's something you can live with. That's your Taycan GTS interior. A note on the range, the car was fully charged this morning and it had a range of 222 compared to my 4S, which was giving me a range in the winter at the moment of around about 205, I think. So whatever changes that they brought in here with the decoupling of the front axle and other software changes, etc., has obviously had a positive effect on the range. Battery is no different, but it's other things that they've kind of massaged. I suspect whenever the facelift Taycan comes out, they will have added probably another 100 miles to this. At least they should have done. It needs to be touching 300 to be really taken seriously by anyone wanting to do more range than someone like me who's happy to do kind of maximum 200 in the day. I'm a big fan of the Taycan interior. GTS brings it up to the level of a GTS. It feels like a GTS inside with all the race techs and the sporty bits. Of course, you've got the sports chrono package, as I said, with your Porsche design stopwatch, which is quite lovely actually. Over there, you've got your drive selects here, and then in this new model year Taycan, the Porsche system has actually been updated. It looks significantly different to the one in mine. A lot more use of color. It's easier to see which icon is which. It's not bugged out so far, which I had some issues with mine, so maybe they've addressed some of those issues as well, which is nice. We've got the Sport Chrono app in there as well, and just generally, it just looks a bit more user-friendly. I feel like they've taken a few design cues from CarPlay and Android Auto on this, but that's not a bad thing, because everything is that much more legible and easy to see. Just like in other Taycans, you've got two shortcut buttons, one here in the screen and one on the steering wheel. Steering wheel I've set to sport electric sound, so I can always turn that on. You guys know how I am with combustion cars as well, exhaust on or else. Same with electric cars, turn the sound on or else. The rear, nice and spacious, exactly the same as my CROSS Turismo in terms of extra head height that you get, and then in terms of the boot, you get that much more space. Again, the same as CROSS Turismo, really nice and spacious, and once you've had it, you seriously cannot do without. So once again, fairly lightly spec Taycan interior, really doing well. I would have liked to see some color in here. The roof is a definite winner. I would forget about that screen. Race text, add a bit of color, lovely, it's nice and GTS. But now we have to see, what is it like on the road? What's that new electric sport sound like? Is the GTS now the new Goldilocks of Taycan? Is it good enough that I'd want to swap my brilliant CROSS Turismo for it? Let's go and find out. I'll tell you what, I find it so exciting to get a preview of a car that I'm interested myself in buying. It's really bizarre as a customer, but then being part of the whole car review world as well. But it's lovely to get that preview, and it's even more exciting for me when it's a left-hand drive German press car here in the UK, which I'm totally used to doing, but I really enjoy the novelty of the whole thing. Now guys, natural place to start with any Porsche, because they always smash the 0 to 60 figures, is the launch control. Let's pop the car into Sport Plus and see how the GTS fares versus what we've seen on the 4S and the Turbo S. Oh, that's fast. Do you hear the gear change again? Whew. And here we have 3.5 seconds. That's a 0.2 improvement on the official figures. No surprise at all. Every single Porsche has always done it on the channel. And that's very, very quick. That's right up there with, you know, M5, E63, etc. Top caliber of Super Saloon giving those kind of speeds on launch control. Right, currently I'm in normal mode, and we're going to first talk about that sport electric sound because it's a little bit different in the GTS. Let's pop it into sport. Now I want you guys to listen out for something, okay? The Taycan, as I explained earlier to you, has 2 gears, first gear, second gear. First gear does sport, sport plus, launch control, etc. Second gear comes into play later. And what Porsche have done very cleverly to add some emotion is added within the sport electric sound an upshift or a down blip sound. So see if you can listen to it now. Did you hear that? So kind of it builds up to a crescendo and then drops back down, just like a combustion car would, I guess. Then you hear that when you slow down as well. So there's 2 elements to that sound profile. But it's very clever and it adds that bit of emotion. It's something that currently only the GTS has. And look, emotion is so important with these cars. And Porsche really started the whole thing with the sport electric sound with the original Taycan, taking it forward a bit. The thing they're missing out that people at AMG are doing really well is having a startup sound and a car turn-off sound, which I keep harping on about because it's really safe to have it, first of all. Secondly, it adds that extra layer of emotional connection that you want with the car. If they add that, I think then they're really onto a winner. In terms of sound profile, it's a little bit different in the GTS. As they said, they made it a little bit more aggressive. It's a bit more bassy. If the original Taycan was like a Star Wars speeder, I'm kind of thinking of this like a Starship. It's just a bit more, it's got a bit more oomph. Now, of course, that's awesome, and it's great as a GTS customer because you're already attuned to thinking that you're going to have a slightly more exciting sounding car when you go for a GTS. So that's definitely the right strategy by Porsche, and it just makes me smile. So the sound is a complete winner. I think that leads me nicely onto speed then, because to get some of that sound, you have to be doing some speeds, and the GTS, I'm in the more aggressive sport mode now, which it's funny when they say that, isn't it? How have you made an electric car sport mode more aggressive? It's probably just the power delivery, and it's very, very eager and direct in the normal sport mode here. The power delivery is a little bit different to my 4S. It just feels that much more responsive. It definitely feels faster than my 4S, like a lot faster. And that's despite the fact that the car's actually heavier. Some of that is down to the chassis revisions, which we'll get onto, but I think the main thing is the torque here. Yes, we haven't got as much wheel torque as the Turbo, but the actual torque figure is exactly the same. 200 Newton meters more than the 4S. Of course you're going to feel that. Because as we know, we drive torque. It's not about horsepower. You really don't feel the horsepower figure. The torque is immense. Now, yes, GTS, a little bit heavier because you've got that bigger motor in the rear compared to the 4S. Why don't we feel it? I think one of the really great things that I miss in my 4S is optioning the rear wheel steer. The rear wheel steer makes the car feel that much smaller. This is a heavier car than my 4S. It should feel a bit more unwieldy, but it does not. It feels smaller. The steering feels more direct. It feels that much more nimble. And because of that, I've got that much more confidence to drive much, much faster in this than I do in my CROSS Turismo. So all of this is the chassis revisions, the suspension revisions, the steering revision, the rear wheel steer coming into play, making the GTS, as it always should be, the most aggressive setup on the road for the model lineup, and it makes total sense. To me, it just reminds me of Turbo S. And again, expectations as GTS customer is exactly that. I really can't stress how much you need to get the rear wheel steer on these cars, because I didn't do it, I regret it, especially having driven this. It just adds an element of, you know, that artificial kind of shortening of the wheelbase. Just makes a long car like this so much more nimble. You need to get it. Now, what is the car like if I put it back into normal mode, which was the mode I used 90% of the time in my 4S? It's a little bit more, I feel as a driver anyway, it's a bit more firm on the road. I had my family in it. They were absolutely happy sitting in it. They didn't find any difference. So that's a win as far as we're concerned. But as a driver, I do feel it's a bit more firm, kind of in the way that when you move up from a normal model to a performance model in a combustion car, it feels firmer and it feels more alive. And we really love that, don't we? I have to say that I absolutely adore this roof. I've just been playing with it too much. It's so exciting. I don't know if you can see that from there. Just messing around with all the different patterns. Someone like me shouldn't be trusted with these things. So It's a wonderful thing, the Taycan GTS, unsurprisingly. I think if you're a petrol head traditionally, like I am, and you're used to having powerful, fast cars, this is going to be that daily that you climb after. A, it's an ingredient, so lots of cost on, as I showed you in my 4S video. But B, it's just really emotional and exciting to drive, just like a combustion car. And I've always said the Taycan isn't a good car because it's a good electric car. It's a good car simply because it's a good car. But here's the thing with the GTS. It is pretty much the perfect variant. And that's problematic for all the other variants, which is not the case perhaps with combustion cars that have different personalities. With the Taycan, it's already got great breathability, being really comfortable when you're driving it normally, and you knock it into sport mode, and suddenly it's a really nice sports saloon. Unlike a combustion car, the range of all of them is pretty similar. The GTS rides, 80% as well as the best riding Taycan. When it comes to speed and performance, you've got all the speed you could ever want. Turbo and Turbo S are maniacal. They're too fast for the road, unless you really want to get into a measuring contest with a Tesla plate, and you'll never win an argument with a Tesla customer anyway. There's really little point, in my opinion, for the amount of speed that those cars have. This is really the Goldilocks car. All that breathability on the comfort side, the speed that you want, and the best handling of the bunch. And that's why it becomes really difficult for me to recommend any of the other variants when this exists, and it seems to do the whole thing so much better. I'll find out more when I get mine, because I love this car. I do want to buy it. I think that's the conclusion. What it definitely is the Porsche of super saloons, and that's regardless of what's powering it under the skin. It is every bit the super saloon that it really is the Goldilocks Taycan. It seems to do everything perfectly, and I've had an absolute blast driving this one. Can't wait to get my own. I might get it identical to this actually. This car looks stunning. So guys, that's my first drive of the Taycan GTS. Absolutely love it. Can't wait to get one myself. If you enjoyed this, please do like and subscribe to RBR. I'll see you guys next time.